Hi, it's Sue Greenwald here with Awakened Stories. I'm here today with Deanna Carr with The Mystical Moonlight. Hey, Dee, how are you?
I am doing good today.
Awesome, awesome. Today's surprise topic for Deanna is the Titanic. All right. I thought we'd do just a little quick one to pique people's interest. So first question, was the Titanic a false flag event? Like, okay, so here's the story I heard, and I want you to confirm the
Mhm.
story and embellish it. That the ship that really sank was the ship Olympus and the Olympic, I'm sorry. And that ship had already been damaged. So what they did is they switched it with the Titanic. They put a different label on it. Okay.
Mhm.
They already knew it was damaged, and they heavily insured that ship. Okay. And it never really hit an iceberg, although it did go into the cold water where people died. But they were actually trying to sink the ship for multiple reasons. Would you agree with that story?
Yes and no. The switch, I'm getting a maybe on. I know there was no iceberg. Um, it was definitely, it was a bomb placed on the inside of the ship. And it was because of financial reasons. So with the ship shift, I don't know about that. Like I said, I'm kind of getting a maybe. I mean, that could definitely fit into the story that I'm getting.
Yeah.
But for the bigger purpose, it was because there were elites on this that were trying to stop certain documents to be going through. They were trying to stop a bill to pass. And it has to do with a lot of things that are going on with society now, uh, oriented with, the Rothschild, all the bills with tax and that kind of thing, the IRS. Because if you look into it, shortly after the Titanic is when all this was put into place. And the Titanic was such a huge idea and a huge thing that a lot of elites went on to it first. Um, because it was such a cool thing to do that it was the perfect story to cover up deaths.
Okay, so you just answered all my questions. So, all right, so one of the reasons why the Titanic sank is that there were three main guys in there that opposed the organization of the Federal Reserve. Okay,
Mhm.
so here in the US, the Federal Reserve was put through, and they're basically a private organization. They're not
Mhm.
part of our government, as we all already know now. But they were John Astor the Fourth, Benjamin Guggenheim, and Isidor Straus, all famous and very wealthy guys, but that opposed the Federal Reserve. So those guys were really the target of the Titanic sinking. Would you
Mhm.
agree with that?
Yes, they were.
Woof. All right. So
Mhm.
of course there were, I forgot the exact number, over 2,000 people died in that sinking,
Mhm.
collateral damage just so the wealthy could create this Federal Reserve.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the person that placed the bomb, did they live?
Yes, they put it on before the sh shipped off.
So they just set a like a 3-day timer or something. You know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and then a lot of it was also trickery. So I know I've seen things coming out about, some of these high elites that were supposed to be on the ship, but they were still magically alive afterwards. And a lot of them, it was tricking. Like they knew it was going to be going off. So they made an appearance like they were going, but they got off the ship right before it set sail.
Oh, wow. How interesting.
Yeah.
So they went and they partied for a little bit and then they snuck out.
So that way, the people that they were really trying to get didn't have any red flags going off because they're like, oh, they're here too.
They
So
didn't
there
have
was
suspicion.
nothing to really say, oh, we probably should get off, or these people said they're going to be here. Where are they?
Hmm.
Um, so there were no red flags going up for them. So they stayed on board.
Wow. Okay.
Mhm.
All right, so there was no iceberg. All right, does everyone get that? And I heard years ago that, the ships were switched because, again, money was involved. And if they sank a broken ship, which they were going to do anyways, they were going to sink a ship. Why use a perfectly good one? Why not
Yeah,
just switch the name? That's what I
yeah.
heard.
And
So,
that would be an easy switch. And there's not like, nowadays everybody has their phone, they could easily take documents, that kind of thing. So it's harder for people to really record things that have shifted back then. So a name shift would be very easy for them to do.
yeah, literally, you just paint a new name on there,
Hmm.
pretty much,
Yeah,
or put in new serial numbers. I don't know what they did back then, but how cool is
yeah.
that? So I didn't see the movie until years and years after it came out. And, it was quite a spectacular movie, a lot of drama, kind of a love story more than a disaster movie. But
Yeah, I didn't actually watch the movie.
you never seen it?
I watched maybe like 10 minutes of it. I'm like, I already know how it ends, so I'm good.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
I wasn't really intrigued by it, but that's just me.
in the movie, there's a giant diamond called something like the heart of the ocean, I think it was called. It was a
Mhm.
big diamond. And I was wondering if that was a real thing. Is that a real diamond?
There is a diamonds, but what they're representing through the diamond is the wealth, and that's what comes after the Titanic sinks.
Right,
So it's really more of a metaphor. So they have to change these movies, like to get the information out, but they want to change it so it's more interesting. So they had the diamonds as it, but really what that's representing is the people that were there for this, like the Rothschild, the wealth, all that kind of thing. So that's really what it's trying to, oh my gosh, I can't talk,
yeah,
trying to
yeah.
depict.
Okay. Okay. All right, so that isn't a real specific diamond, but it just represents the wealth. Okay, because in the movie, like the wealthy people, like they had all the fancy dresses and all that, and wooden staterooms and a lot of servants, and when you think of it by today's standards, that ship wasn't that big. But
It wasn't.
yeah,
It wasn't that big, but it was unique. And that's what really sold it was they had this idea and that's how they sold it.
yeah,
Um, and honestly, I mean, there's a lot of questions that go around it because it's like, was it really that important? But at the time, you have to think like traveling wasn't like what we have today. It's not like you can just hop on a plane. Like that's so normalized for us that it was a big deal then because transportation wasn't like it is today.
right,
So that's why all of these elites went on to it. It's because they, well, one wanted to show off that they had money, but two, they wanted to try something different and it was a little bit more pricey for the average person to go. So
right.
that's why it was mostly the upper class. And
And
then of course you see in it, you see the negative energies coming off these wealthy people. I mean, still kind of how it is today. They think they're above everybody else.
yeah.
But yeah, the main purpose was to get everything moving in the direction that they wanted with the
Right.
bomb.
Right. So what happened when that ship went down? Then these three guys died.
Mhm.
They've got quite nice landmarks left behind for to honor them. But when they died, the Federal Reserve was created anyway. But everyone was still a buzz about the Titanic and the shock and
Yeah.
the horror of it. And again, communication was extremely slow back then compared to now. And
Mhm. Yeah. And then how are you going to go and see what happened? I mean, it's sunk. So, they're just giving you whatever they wanted to
yeah,
say how it sunk.
yeah, yeah,
Um, so a lot of it is just what can we tell the people to get off our back?
yeah,
And then
exactly.
it's not as crazy. You're talking about a whole ship sinking versus three people going missing. So it was easier to say, oh, all these elites, died off in the Titanic because it sunk because iceberg versus three random people found dead on this ship. Um, So there's multiple things that were going on during that time.
Interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, so they went ahead and created the Federal Reserve, therefore for creating their own empire of wealth and making
Mhm.
the rich even richer, you know,
Yep.
and the poor struggling even more. And you can kind of see in the movie the disparity between the ultra rich. Then there's the guys that are shoveling, I don't know, coal or whatever, making the engines run, and they've got like it had to be like kind of horrible,
Yeah.
and they got trapped below deck, and
Mhm.
that was a horrible thing to witness on the movie, so
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, yeah, it's horrendous because really what they're saying, the only difference is how much money do you have. And that can be easy for some people. You're born into it. You didn't work for the money. You didn't do anything for that. So why are you putting yourself above them?
right,
Um, so there's a lot of things in the movie that are depicted that we still see in society today. There's a lot of elites that think that they're above us just because they have more money. And really that's the only thing that you have. I
right,
mean,
right,
obviously your personality is not that good if you think money's going to solve that.
yeah, yeah.
um but unfortunately they have the money, and um they kind of do what they want, and that's
Yeah.
kind of how our society is run.
Money is freedom in this society right now,
Yeah.
pretty much. So we've seen tons and tons of documentaries and shows, they take a submarine down and, oh, it's so deep, we can't dive down there. We'll never find out what really happened. So that story has been perpetuated for over 100 years, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it was a couple years ago, they sent a submarine down there. I don't even know what happened. The guys never came back. I don't even know what happened, but
So that's interesting because that was actually depicted from The Simpsons. So the submarine you're talking about,
yeah.
honestly, me and my husband talk about it. It's kind of crazy as is. I mean, they used a gaming controller to control a submarine in the bottom of the ocean. So there's a lot of things that were like, was that smart? Like, I
Was
mean,
it a
just
real
from a
thing?
logical standpoint, no.
Yeah.
Um, but apparently they did it multiple times. But what made this one different um, was it was obviously a billionaire. I mean, they had a lot of money. But I don't know specifically what he was doing, but he was trying to change something. So the sub actually wasn't just exploding because the pressures of the ocean. They went down there multiple times in the same sub. So why all of a sudden when they go down there, it explodes this time? He was doing something to help the people. And we do have billionaires that, actually do want to help, but what we tend to see is they go missing.
Yeah.
Some
Yeah.
crazy thing happens to them because they have the wealth to actually change society to benefit people and not just themselves.
Right. Right.
So that whole incident, it was depicted in Simpsons beforehand, and it was for a purpose that it exploded.
Super interesting, isn't it?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else we should know about the Titanic? Like, it's just an interesting story that's intrigued. It's still being talked about, 100 and something years later. We're
Yeah.
just interested in it. But like I've known the story isn't true for years and years. So that's why when they
Mhm.
say, oh, we're sending a sub down there, I'm like, liars, I don't really
Mhm.
follow the story very closely.
Yeah. So some of it, it's to keep the thought on, oh, it's got hit by an iceberg. But like you said, you have to send a submarine down to even see what truly happened. I mean, their guess is just a guess that an iceberg hit it, because how do they know? They weren't there. And like we said, communication wasn't as accessible as it is now, where you have a radio, you have phones, you have some sort of way to connect, you have GPS.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of questions about that. And then they don't want people going down there because they don't want to actually have it explored. So part of what they've told people is that if they bring Titanic up, it's going to break on the lift up.
Yeah,
Now, I'm sure it's been so long that part of that is accurate, but at the same point, they don't want it being brought up for a purpose because then people actually will find out what truly happens.
yeah. Okay. Super interesting. Yeah. And we're told that the water was so cold, no one could survive, and that was in the water. And of course, after a while, that's true, so
Yeah, your body can only take so much. I
yeah,
think the interesting part, now, like I said, I haven't seen the movie, but when it is an iconic scene, so even if you haven't seen it, you've seen pictures
yeah,
where she's on the lifeboat holding her hands out and he's in the water freezing to death.
yeah,
Just pull him onto the boat. Like,
yeah. Well,
and
I
that's
was,
where we really see the separation between classes. All the elites got to stay on these boats where there's plenty of space for other people.
yeah, yeah.
But hey, let's let them die.
I think they only allowed like something like 14 people per lifeboat, the elite. They didn't want to crowd them where thousands of people, basically died. I mean, and if they had put even, 20 more people per boat, that would have been good. But no, they didn't want to crowd them or anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, and then your next thing is, well, why didn't you have extra boats? So there's a lot of things that were kind of up to question about
Yeah.
logic
Yeah.
for them.
In the movie, and we've heard it said that the orchestra played on deck while the boat was going down. The orchestra's playing, and everyone knows they're going to die pretty much, and they go
Yeah.
down with the ship. Is that a true story?
No.
No,
No.
dang
No.
it.
No, the part of that was for visual. I mean, it's interesting to look at when you have an orchestra playing and everybody else running around. I mean, I'm sure they understood that they were going to die because they were not elites. They're just an orchestra. But everybody was pretty much in chaos. When the ship started going down, no matter what, your internal being is saying, I need to get off here.
Yeah,
So everybody was struggling.
yeah,
Um, the only ones that really weren't, or if they didn't feel it, if they didn't see it happening. But at some point, there was a shift where everybody was
yeah,
panicking.
yeah. There's the last couple, well, in the movie when the ship goes down, it's like it's standing up in the water and people are hanging by the railings. It's like, oh, I couldn't really watch that. I'm getting chills now. But when you're around a vessel that's sinking, whatever it might be, if you get too close, you're going to be sucked in. And that was a pretty big ship, and that was a big way to fall. So
Yeah,
that was very like kind of realistic for me, but I didn't watch it. I had to leave the room. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. There are some things where you don't want to watch it. You
yeah,
can't handle because I mean, yes, it's a movie, but at some points,
yeah,
what about it is real and what is
yeah,
fake, and that's
yeah,
where it is hard to discern. Because yeah, if you're trying to hold on for dear life, you're gonna hold on, but at some point you're gonna become weak.
yeah,
And yeah, I wouldn't want. There's a few other disaster movies where I've seen. I'm like, I'm not going on that.
yeah, yeah.
But even so, I've seen a lot of videos with cruise ships sunken, turned over, flipped. A lot of disasters with cruise ships, and it's towards this day and age, like it's like recent. So it's definitely not just something that's happened back then, like it's still happening now.
Right.
I will never be able to get Alan on a cruise ship ever. So
Keep
never
your
going
thing,
again.
stop watching those videos. So,
Yeah. Oh, no,
uh,
the funny part is he mentioned this beforehand. I mean, we all know about the Titanic, but he'd mentioned like, oh, the ship will sink. Literally after we talked about it, it's video after video about how these ships sinking, turned over. I'm like, dang it. I was trying to get you to go.
yeah. Wow. Anything else we need to know about the cruise ship? I'm
Um,
sorry, Titanic.
no, I
I'm talking
think,
about thinking about cruises, and then that leads to food.
yeah,
That
right.
leads to the beach.
Yeah. Where are we going?
Yeah, yeah. Anything
But
else we need to know?
I think that's the majority of it.
All right,
I
thank
think
you.
I think that's the base of Titanic.
Yeah, yeah. So interesting topic. Like I said, it still intrigues us 100 years later. So that's why
Mhm.
I was called to do it. I don't know why, so we're putting it out there.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much, Dee. Appreciate your time.
Of course.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.